Hi everybody. Real quick, I just wanted to go through this Abigail Adams prompt and explain a couple of the strategies that she's using and kind of give you some ideas about how you can talk about them. At the very end, we'll go through a couple examples. So what I first want to talk about is this prompt itself, right? So you want to make sure that you're reading all of this very carefully. In the following letter, Abigail Adams writes to her son, John Quincy Adams, who is traveling abroad with his father, John Adams, a United States diplomat and later the country's second president. So the second president is John Adams right here. Read the letter carefully, then in a well-developed essay, analyze the rhetorical strategies Adams uses to advise her son. So we know what she's trying to do based on just the prompt. She's trying to advise her son. We know that he is traveling abroad with his father, and so he's away from his mom. Support your analysis with specific references to the text. I want to really make sure that everybody knows that this is not an option. That's required. All right, so real quick, and anything that I talk about during this time, you could turn into an entire paragraph, really. So let's change colors real quick, just because I like to be tedious. All right, my dear son. So you could begin even an entire paragraph just about how she addresses her son. My dear son, right? Maybe you want to talk about how this establishes tone. Right, so maybe I'm going to discuss the tone that sets and then find a couple more times throughout this evidence of the same type of motherly love type of tone, and then I can build a paragraph around that. Why do mothers talk to their sons or their daughters in a certain way? Obviously, they're trying to be encouraging. They want you to do your best, right? And it's, not super motivating if your parent says, hey, stop being a baby, just go do it, right? Although, sometimes that's just how it goes too, right? So we want to maybe talk about her tone and her use of certain diction throughout. Maybe that's one option. All right, so we find out, and this is a very dense text with a lot of advanced diction that we don't really use in our common language anymore. Everything is very packed in here. You can take a look, and as you're reading through this essay, you see it's very packed with words, right? It's not a bunch of short words and a bunch of long words. It's not real long, drawn-out ideas. Everything is very concise. So that's why reading carefully is hyper important, and now you know why we've been reading so much this year. Okay, so let's see. We know that perhaps based on the text, maybe John Quincy didn't initially want to go, right? Because we see in the second body paragraph, you readily submitted to my advice. And I hope you had no occasion in the previous to repent your second voyage to France. So it kind of seems like JQA, we'll call him, maybe just JQ. I don't know. We'll think about it. JQ maybe didn't want to go, and his mom is kind of telling him, I hope you still want to go. I hope everything is all right. She talks about how, your knowledge of the language must be given greater advantages, must give you greater advantage now than you could possibly have reaped whilst ignorant of it. So why is she's giving him very specific things that he can be doing to make sure that he's putting his best self forward, right? So this is why our parents, and especially our mothers, say, make sure that, hey, did you brush your teeth? Did you comb your hair? Are your underwear clean? This is the 18th century, bourgeois version of, hey, is your underwear clean? Are you practicing your French, right? Let's keep going. We have this whole thing. This is a metaphor. I think she may mention this again, this metaphor of a river later on as an extended metaphor. That just means if it's extended, it shows up again. That's all. But this metaphor about a river picking up running through rich veins, improve their qualities, explain the metaphor in your paragraph, but then also explain why she did this. Why did it need to be said to him? How is it? And we know, right? We know because we go up here that she's advising her son. So it needs to be said because she's advising her son. Why does this advice, why would it be useful? And it's a pretty imagery. We all want to be I don't know, maybe not rivers, but we all want to be big and strong someday, right? And our mommies are typically the ones that enforce that earlier on. One thing that I really like that she's done here is she has not come right out and said, hey, you're like Cicero. She's comparing him to Cicero, though, because she's saying, hey, would Cicero have shown as such a distinguished orator if it weren't for all of these people up here, Catelyn, Varys, and Mark Antony? Basically the Game of Thrones cast of ancient Rome, right? And very soon after these guys are around, you've got the decline of Rome. But Cicero, great orator, right? So he's saying, you may not like the French people that you're hanging out with. You may not like all the stuffy old people that you're hanging out with, but you are being sharpened by this. And you can explain that in relation to this advice to her son, right? It all leads back to her primary purpose is to advise and motivate her son. You could talk a little bit about how this is all just after the War of Independence, but you wouldn't necessarily have to, but it is around that time period. So those of you who are history nerds like me, go all in. So she ends it with saying, listen, I know you're going to do well because of these things here. You've always valued the truth. And I know that as long as you continue to be this strong young man that you are now, you will always be my big boy. All right? I think all of us can kind of relate to that. So let's take a look at a couple of people, how they introduced this whole thing. Many people regard parenting as the most demanding profession in the world because parents need to strike a delicate balance between the demonstration of love and the reiteration of principles when instructing their children. Fantastic hook, right? Directly relates to what we're going to be talking about, but they haven't given away the goose yet, right? You got to bury your lead a little bit whenever you're doing writing like this. Then the context is established, and then the thesis goes in here. Let's take a look at just one more how it's begun. Ooh, boy, that's a long one. A mother's love is unyielding and unconditional in its strength, power, and ability to motivate her children. So very similar, right? A little bit shorter. I think shorter is better. In every sense of this definition, Abigail Adams embodies a mother's love in her letter to her son, John Quincy Adams. And then that's the context right here, and now it's going to build into the thesis, right? So you want to make sure, in closing, that you're making sure that you are addressing the strategies, but then also explaining why they would have used them. How does it go back to the purpose? That's what this is all about, really, right? The text that you're given, it's already been established that text was efficient and effective for the purpose. All you have to do is illustrate that you can explain why that's the case, right? And all of you guys can do this. You're all brighter than 1,000 suns,